coming to, I think, from the investments in startups to the wealth generation for employees side of things, right? I think another piece that everyone has been hoping to hear for very long and still has not happened is the taxation around ESOPs. One of the biggest challenge around ESOPs is the taxation that happens on unrealized gains. The moment you exercise, you have to pay the difference on the exercise amount minus whatever is the fair market value. And you've not realized any gains. You've got no stocks, you've got no cash, you're paying to buy these cash, but you have to pay these taxes, right? How do you think this impacts the startup ecosystem in India and the value that employees put on ESOPs? And maybe I think with it, we can start from you in terms of how do you employees at your company think about this? How this challenge has been perceived by them? And what do you think should be done in this space?
This doesn't make sense to me, right? Like why? This is the only superpower a lot of startups have, especially in the beginning, to attract more and more people to the company. When you can't pay them their market salaries, you want to make sure that you attract them by paying ESOPs. And now when you impose a liability, something like this, it just, again, creates hesitation in minds of people who could come and join you. So I think, and a lot of people don't even understand this, by the way. Like to some people, I think some companies now have exemption who are part of Startup India registration. Some companies are not. Not everyone is covered. So there's so much confusion around this as well. I don't know a lot of this clarification has come or not in the recent times. But just again, it's a mess. Like someone needs to just go deep, understand, hey, what do startups need? How do we encourage the ecosystem? And then how do we bring this clarity? How do we have at least the same policy for all companies? And how do we make them friendly for employees if they want to take ESOPs? I think both things need to be solved here.
I think even with the US stocks that are issued to the employees, there's still the taxation aspect apply. Like for example, for us at Razorpay, we get the Razorpay Inc. ESOPs that are offered. But given the taxation regimes and the dual taxation, we still have to pay those taxes. And the challenge that I've seen, I think with the peer groups, and Razorpay has done multiple buybacks, right? The challenge has always been that people exercise and they sell because of the fact that for the remaining part that they've exercised, they have to pay the fair market value taxation. And especially for people when they're exercising, this comes into their general gains, not into their capital gains or long-term capital gain, which means it comes into the highest tax bracket. And especially for companies where the FMV has increased a lot, you've not exercised for quite some time, the amount becomes quite significant. Employees have to shell out a lot of it. So general trend that I have seen is that employees prefer to exercise only when there's a buyback happening. And we still don't see an environment where a lot of buybacks are happening. There are still limited companies which are doing it, although it's increased, but still limited around this. Rajat, how do you look at this from Matrix perspective?
It's a pain. There is no easy solution, and that's all. Again, big ask from the government to try and find a solution. I think I may be wrong on this, but there are ways to potentially do this via trust structure in India. And I don't know enough. Most companies don't end up doing it because it's a nightmare to manage. Operationally complex, or at least I think it's also the problem of capital gains, etc. The issue is the day you exercise, your clock starts from that day, and if you've exercised after 7 years, it's a problem. So there are no easy solutions, but potentially more creative heads need to sit together and figure this out.
No, so we've actually, for Equitylist India, we first launched Equitylist.co, which is actually making it transparent for employees. We've gone live in US as well, now in India as well. India was our first market, and now we've gone live in Singapore and US as well for people to manage their this thing, and employees have a complete understanding of what the taxation looks like for them if they start exercising right now, or what if, a future scenario modeling for employees as well in case the company value increases. So for them to help with tax planning and stuff. So we're trying to do whatever we can in terms of the education, with over 100 companies in India are using it now.
And is it possible to observe that we might see some kind of a secondary market opening up also along with this, that there's more liquidity available for the employees? Maybe something that Equitylist itself can probably enable?
I think a lot of people discussed it. Even Karta is doing this in US, Karta X. But the problem is that secondary in India is a pain to deal with. Forget the paperwork, but getting board approved a block of stock to sell in the open market, which has not been refused, which has been refused by all other investors. I think that is a pain to do. If it's a hot company, then existing investors typically just preempt that.
Yep,
ropers and all of those that exist, right? So it's hard. Plus, the SEBI also has an issue, right? On just creating a secondary marketplace.
Secondary marketplace, but offline you can close transactions.
Offline, of course, you can close. Yeah.
Yep. I think what I've heard from some of the founders is
Stock
just
exchange sort of thing, because if you start a secondary stock market where people are bidding and putting up offers and bids, this thing, that becomes sort of like a pseudo stock exchange, and they're not okay with that.